Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Medics Money podcast. This is Cyra, one of your team at Medics Money. I'm a chartered accountant and a doctor, and I have taken over Women's Week. Now, you're asking what's Women's Week? Well, International Women's Day is coming up on the 8th of March. And Tommy said to me, could you do something for International Women's Day? And I said, no, because I deserve more than a day. I'm having a week. And so to start my International Women's Week, I am going to be speaking with Mel. Mel, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Melanie Thomas. I am an accountant who has been looking after doctors as part of my career for the last 20 years. And that's consultants and mainly GP partners acting in practice. That's kind of what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So mainly NHS doctors, I would say, but also doctors with private practice as well. Everything from finance, pensions, tax.
Fantastic. And so you would be able to give us a lot of insights and behaviors that you've noticed over your career. So I'm just going to launch straight in, and I'm going to target NHS consultants first. And I just wanted to find out from your experience, have you noticed any difference in the way NHS consultants?
And this, of course, is all anecdotally from the clients that I've seen over the years. But I think from the consultant clients I have, first of all, I think there probably are more male consultant clients that I have more, than in terms of numbers than female ones. But also those consultants that I do have, the ones that would have their private practice running alongside the NHS work, and maybe they've set up a limited company, that does tend to be quite heavily skewed towards men who will have taken that risk, if you like, to set up in private practice, because there will be some initial setup costs, and you don't know for sure that you're going to get the private work. And I think they're also more likely to um, feel okay about reducing their NHS commitment and doing more of the private work if that's deemed to be more lucrative. Whereas most of the female clients that I've got, or a lot of the female clients that I've got who are consultants, are purely NHS and
That's
less
really
likely to have
interesting. I
private work.
wonder why that's the case.
Yeah,
Sorry, carry on, Mel.
yeah. So whether it is a risk-taking approach, that perhaps female doctors feel happier working in the hospital setting, surrounded by colleagues in that team environment, and they know that the holidays are paid and they know that the work's going to be there if they turn up for work. Whereas the private work, there is a risk, isn't there, that you don't get as much work as you want or as much as you need, and probably a bit of a lonelier environment than working in a team of colleagues.
Interesting, and not something I'd thought about before. I'd be really interested to find out, if you're listening, if you have any insights into this as to why male consultants are more likely to go into private practice than female consultants. But in terms of your experience with GPs, what have you seen?
Yeah, so I think it's a well-known fact that there are more female GPs than male GPs these days. And whether that is because it's deemed to be more family friendly, working in the GP practice than hospital, I'm not sure. Most of my clients would already have become partners in a practice rather than be salaried. So we do see plenty of female partner GPs, but whether they would be taking the finance lead in the practice, probably less so. We tend to find that men seem to take that role naturally. And I would also say that lots of GPs these days are part-time anyway, male and female, but certainly the female GPs, it's rare to see full-time female GPs. They would definitely be in the minority. So you almost then, because partners are paid based on the profits that they earn, you naturally have a gender pay gap there. And as a knock-on effect to that, because GPs' pensions are driven by how much pensionable profits they earn, then the female GP who's working part-time will also naturally have a lower pension than somebody who was working full-time. And I think that's fairly common. Not done any sort of official studies on on earnings. And the only time we do measure GP earnings in a sort of league table, if you like, is because we now have this transparency of earnings. So we're supposed to name and shame those GPs earning above a certain threshold. It might be worth me running my eye down that list and just seeing if they're all male GPs or not. I'm not sure. It's something to think about, or something to think about if that transparency ever, if anybody ever published the results, which I'm not sure many people do, whether the NHS audit office would ever put anything on about how many of those high earners are male versus female. It'd be interesting to see statistics to find out, because it's GP earnings being self-employed and partnership. It's quite hard to get a handle on that, and whether it's a real gender pay gap or not.
Yeah, I would be really interested to see those figures myself. It'd be quite useful to see. And I think, I mean, what we're getting at here is that women still take the hit when it comes to families, and that the women usually have to reduce their hours, or their hours have to be more family friendly, or their career choices have to be more family friendly. And it seems to be them that needs to make the sacrifices when it comes to this, to their careers. What about in terms of behaviors related to investing? I know you can't give investing advice, but in terms just of your experience, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think we'd certainly be more likely to get questions about how can I reduce my tax bill by making investments. So those would typically be in things like venture capital trusts, enterprise investment schemes, seed enterprise investment schemes. Um, and they do, I can't give investment advice. I'm not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. So that would be the first thing that I said to them. But also, although there is a tax saving, there's a tax saving because they're risky investments. So, you're going into it knowing that you might lose whatever money you've invested in that. And so I definitely rarely get those questions from women about investing in riskier things. And, is that because they do have a lower appetite for risk, or is that because their pay might be lower than a male colleague who's working full time? So there's kind of less need to, less tax bills, so they feel less threatened by it. So I think that is one thing for sure. I would also say about, when we've just been through the January tax return season, so all the tax returns go in at the end of January. And in my experience, usually it is mixed, but if I had to call it on anecdotal evidence or only, women, I think, are better at saving for the tax bills than men. They kind of listen, as long as they've had the right advice about how much to save, they're generally pretty diligent about doing that and putting the money to one side. And again, it's probably that they don't want to get in trouble with the HMRC. They want to make sure the money's there. Whereas men are more likely to go, well, I believe they've saved enough. They're always I shouldn't say always, but they can be quite vocal about, well, I have saved all my money. I've saved enough, but the tax money's still not there. Believing that they've saved when they haven't done. So I guess that's one thing I see. And I also, one thing, just talking about, I think what you were saying before, Cyra, about women taking that family friendly role. I know even from my own experience that I feel like women take on the responsibility at home. I am talking in very general terms now, with the family strategy and the strategy around the home and all those big decisions, where do the children go to school, even like down to how to celebrate birthdays and how much to spend on birthdays. So we have less brain capacity to be thinking about this other ancillary stuff, about investing or finance. I feel like that's a real thing for colleagues that I know that have been working as well. It's hard to have that brain space to think outside the box when you've got all this other brain space thinking about other family strategies as well as your working life.
That's such a valid point that you raise. And I don't think I'd actually thought about that personally until you brought it up. That actually you're right. So, you're thinking about so much else, your plate's so full with everything else, this sort of hidden workload, if you like. And then then having to make that decision about the money, about the risk, about all the things that you have to be spending money on, it's a lot harder to then justify almost taking risks with it the same way you would do if you weren't as aware. And that's
Yeah, I
certainly
think
not
that's
not
true,
something I'd
yeah.
thought about. And lastly, any ideas of what women can, from your experience, that might help them get a bit more of an equal footing?
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult when there's 2 people in a partnership and you have got family commitments, because it is hard to I feel like women naturally are more conscientious beings. I'm probably being unfair to men here, but if you're giving a role your all, maybe a female doctors are happy to be part-time and take that lower pay, in order to spend time with the families, and I can understand that as well. But I feel like from a financial point of view and becoming financially literate and understanding the finances, definitely have the confidence to be the finance lead, because it doesn't necessarily mean if you've got good advisors, you don't need to be a financial expert to be a financial lead. You just need to have a interest in it, I suppose, as long as it doesn't drain you, the subject, and bore you. But if you're interested in financial matters, then why not stand up and be the financial lead and ask your accountants and your tax advisors all the questions to educate yourself and understand how the numbers work, because you're not expected to be an expert. You're a doctor at the end of the day. Being a finance lead just means trying to gain an understanding of it and appreciate the knock-on impact of some of the financial decisions that GP make and how that impacts on their ultimate profitability. And even from a consultant's point of view as well, asking the questions and having the confidence to do something different and take the advice can help, I guess, reassure about that, taking that step into the private world of work.
That is incredibly helpful. And I think I will be touching upon those aspects in a lot more detail in different parts of Medics Money's Women's Week. I'll be talking about why women are programmed from even before childhood, even before they're born, to be perfect and not to make mistakes and not to take risks, and why that's actually interfering with our ability to have an equal footing. So do please stay tuned to Women's Week. It'll be across Instagram, YouTube, on the podcast episode. I will be everywhere for a week and I can't wait. Thank you so much, Melanie, for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me on.